How did the Netflix series turn the monster from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest into a tortured soul worthy of our sympathy? Why is Mildred Ratched's love life the key to understanding her? And how did Sarah Paulson explore the character's hidden nature? Hi, I'm Dylan, and you're tuned into Awesome Movies. A tendency for violence. When we first met Nurse Ratched in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, she was cold and heartless. She didn't have time for the patient's tomfoolery or games. That being said, she never got her hands dirty when they got out of line. Her cruelness was far more psychological than physical. Instead, she preferred to leave the dishing out of harsh punishment, such as the shock therapy, to other staff members. Netflix's Ratched shows the younger Mildred is slightly more hands-on, as she tries out some of Dr. Hanover's more controversial treatments. Even though she isn't an experienced medical professional, she still performs a lobotomy on an unassuming priest. What's impressive is how she manages to perform the procedure and not actually kill the poor soul in the process. Still, this is a different side to the nurse that we haven't seen before. It establishes her as more than a tyrant, but also as someone who poses a serious physical threat. Quite frankly, it makes her far scarier than the version we saw in the film. I mean, would you feel comfortable around a nurse who'd want to practice life-threatening and frankly dangerous procedures on you? My body hurts just thinking about it. An impeccable sense of style. One thing that hasn't changed for Nurse Ratched is her keen eye for fashion and a stylish exterior. While some people might say her 1940s hairstyle looks dated in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, she still oozes a classic elegance in her appearance. She grew up in an era where judgments were made based on how you looked and ensured her appearance remained neat and tidy at all times. In the prequel series, she wows and charms everyone around her by always dressing impeccably and like she's walked out of a fashion catalog. She is the picture-perfect image of what you'd expect a nurse to look like, both at work and outside of it. Whether it's her distinct green apparel or her ability to match her hat with the dress of the day, she takes incredible pride in how she looks. That being said, the younger Mildred seems to experiment more with colors than the older version of the character. Maybe it's symbolic of how she feels at the time, as she's filled with more hope and optimism for the future. Alternatively, she just had better options for her style of clothing when she was younger. Now the real question is, which celebrities do you think will be imitating Mildred's style in the months to come? The lust for power. Just ask Randall McMurphy how much Mildred loves her power. She flaunts it in everyone's face, never being afraid to show you that she holds your destiny in the palm of her hands. She's become the poster child of how any sort of power can corrupt and go to the head. And Ratched's executive producer Ryan Murphy agrees. He told Vanity Fair, "I feel like Nurse Ratched is sort of a shorthand for barbarism. She became almost like a catchphrase for any sort of institutional abuse of power. What was interesting was trying to create an emotional character from a reputation that's very cold. And this is where the prequel show differentiates itself from the film in the biggest way. You now understand why Mildred wants power so much. When she and her brother were children, they were abused, tortured, and treated in the most despicable ways imaginable. Part of her journey is regaining the power in her life. She knows that those at the top get exactly what they want, and get away with everything too. For her, she wants a piece of it, to feel what they feel. She wants to have influence and the ability to change outcomes. Unfortunately though, she ends up becoming a monster in the process as well. Maybe it's power, and not just money, that's the root of all evil. A stickler for the rules. You know what they say about the rules, right? They're meant to be broken. Randall McMurphy lived his life as the ultimate rebel, refusing to conform to any one of the asylum's rules. Naturally, it caused him to butt heads with Mildred Ratched. As an authoritarian, she embraced the rules, constantly citing them as the reason for why certain things were and were not allowed. The younger Mildred is very similar, needing some semblance of structure and protocol for her to function. She respects the need for law and order. At the same time, she's also selective over whose rules she follows. It indicates there's a rebel hidden inside of her, as she questions certain authority figures and their decisions. While she might not necessarily show the same level of disdain and revolt like Mac did, it isn't difficult to spot her annoyance when she disagrees with someone. That being said, both versions of Mildred have shown to be a little bit hypocritical, especially when it comes to rules and the application thereof, and that's something we'll be explaining next. A manipulative nature. Ironically, for someone who keeps beating the drum of how important rules are, Nurse Ratched doesn't seem to mind bending them when it suits her. It's a common theme in both the film and on the show, as she demonstrates a self-serving, manipulative behavior that borders on monstrous. Whether it's with her colleagues, patients, or superiors, she connives, manipulates, and deceives when she thinks it gets her closer to what she wants. And if you get in her way, well, sorry for you, buddy. Actress Sarah Paulson told Vanity Fair that Mildred's behavior stems out of a pursuit of survival and finding a sense of home. She said, "Even though the methods that she chooses to achieve that internal security are somewhat questionable, I would argue that she's doing them with a potentially selfish need, but a survival need nonetheless. Sort of an animal need that binds her to the inappropriateness of some of her actions. Once you start to understand her history and all that she experienced in her childhood, you might sympathize more with the character than what you did in the past. There's a twisted reason for her doing the things she does." But does that automatically excuse her behavior, though? The power of love. Oh, Mildred, it's hard to imagine anyone loving you when One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. You aren't exactly lovable or show any signs that you'll respond well to a hug or any form of affection. Well, as it turns out, there's truly a lid for every pot. In the prequel series, Mildred experiences a forbidden love with Gwendolyn Briggs. While she rejects Gwen's strong advances at first, she finally admits her feelings for her. In a time when same-sex relationships were seen as deviant behavior, Mildred musters the courage to be herself and pursue a life with her new partner, despite what the rest of the world might think of them. Then, in the greatest show of love, Mildred uses her newfound fortune to help Gwen in her battle against cancer. Considering how deep and passionate the love they share is, it does beg the question, what happened to Gwen? In One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, there's no mention of Mildred's partner at all. Perhaps Gwen wasn't able to overcome her battle against cancer, or things just didn't work out and they went their separate ways. If that's so, it could also explain why Mildred has become so unfeeling in her later life. Maybe the price of love cost her everything else. The importance of friendship. Thinking back to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Nurse Ratched didn't exactly look like she had many friends. Her colleagues respected her more out of a sense of fear and not because of any friendship. In fact, you'd imagine that most of them had intense gossiping sessions behind her back. Yet in the prequel, Mildred makes quite a few friends, even at work. For example, she builds an extremely close friendship with Huck Finnegan. At one point, Mildred even defends him when he doesn't agree with a dangerous procedure. The two become close, and Huck even admits to wanting to take her on a date. While it doesn't happen because Mildred's heart belongs to Gwen, they still remain close friends and confide in each other until the end. In a way, it's hard to reconcile this version of the character with the film's portrayal of her. Sure, things happen in life and people can change, but what hardened her to the point that she became cold and distant to her coworkers? Was it the one betrayal at the end of season 1 that pushed her over the edge? Maybe the next season might provide some answers. Compassion for patients. Judging by One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Nurse Ratched had about as much love for her patients as an exterminator has for roaches.
Her demeanor remained stern and unfeeling, refusing to consider their emotions or what they wanted. I mean, look at how her ice-cold words and threats affected Billy, ultimately leading to his tragic end.
On the show, Mildred is much more different, showing a humane and caring side towards certain patients. She challenges Nurse Bucket when she believes she's gone too far with a patient.
And when her pleas fall on deaf ears, Mildred and Huck hatch a plan to get the patient out of the psychiatric hospital.
Mildred also protects Charlotte Wells when the patient commits the most atrocious act, even covering up for her. However, her defense of Charlotte ends up coming back to bite her later, which might explain her future attitude towards patients. In this earlier version of Nurse Ratched, the character sees the world beyond black and white. She understands that a lot of life is lived in a gray area. It's likely that this trait was written into the series to ensure that the audience is able to build a better connection with the character. I mean, you can't exactly cheer for a protagonist who consistently behaves like an antagonist, right?
Undoubtedly, Netflix's Ratched has provided us with a different perspective on an infamous character.
It paints a more colorful picture of her origin story and why she did the things she did. If anything, it's a character study of how the past can haunt and influence your future, and as a result, create a monster. But now let's hear from you. What did you think of this new version of Mildred? And do you think a second season of the show is absolutely necessary? Thanks for watching, and be sure to leave your comments down below. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to Awesome Movies.